Hey, this is Ralph, and in this video I want to continue working on my basic spreadsheet here by using some more features in Excel. So I've already entered some numbers, I've entered some text, done some alignment, and some basic cell formatting. I've changed background colors and I've changed alignments of text and bold. So let's do a few more things. Now we can insert new columns by right-clicking on a column letter that is, right-click on a column letter and choose Insert, but I can also delete. So let's say I don't want the Saturday column anymore. I can choose my Saturday column, which for me is column G, right-click on that column G heading and choose Delete. That column is gone. So now I simply have 5 days of the week for columns. Now let's do some basic summing here. Down here below A6, I'm going to go to my cell A7, click on A7, I'll type in the word total. And then I would like to sum the numbers for each day of the week. I'm going to do this for one cell here in B7, which will be my sum of my Monday values. And there's a couple ways I can do this. I could do this by hand, doing equals B2 plus B3 plus B4 plus B5 plus B6. And I will get the right answer. So my data adds up to 1567. Let me double click on this cell. But that's a very inefficient way to write out a formula. I mean, what if I had more than 5 cells to add up? What if I had 15 or 50 cells to add up? So whenever there's a lot of things to add up or calculate with, that's when you want to rely on functions as opposed to a formula. This is really considered a formula. Equals one cell plus another cell plus another cell. Simple mathematical operation. Excel also has functions, though, to save us some time. So I could instead type equals sum, a set of parentheses, and then I can type out the range of cells that I want to sum up. In this case, B2 colon B6. There it is, closing parentheses. So this is a sum function for a range of cells, and particularly I'll be summing up B2 through B6. Press my enter key and there's my total, 1567. Now the sum function is very popular and it's used a lot. And Excel makes it very easy for us to apply the sum function. If I activate a cell, by the way, I just deleted what I had. So if I activate a cell below a consecutive column of numbers, okay, then I can go up to my home ribbon to the right side and I can click my Autosum button and just click it once. It's automatically going to write the function for me, and in most cases it'll even select the appropriate cells to add up like it did here, and I can just press enter to confirm. So that was pretty easy. Control Z, so clear that out again. I can also select a range of cells that contains numbers plus a blank one at the bottom, and then I can hit the sum function and it'll automatically put the total in there for me. What it did was write in that sum function again. So that's pretty good. And let me show you one more way. I could also start to spell out the sum function, then opening parentheses, but instead of typing in the range by hand, I can click and drag the series of cells that I want to add up, and it writes the range in there for me. Really, I should type in a closing parentheses, but if I press my enter key, Excel helped me out and it typed in the closing parentheses for me. So there's a sum function. Now that I have one successful sum function, I can autofill that to the right, and it'll put in the sum functions for each of these other columns. So my Monday was summing B2 through B6. My Tuesday is summing C2 through C6. So Excel was helping me out by modifying the cell references as I filled this formula or function over to the right. And so that I can keep my formatting here, I'll go ahead and change these. I will select, there it is, there's the blue. Feels better. I feel better about that. If I'd like to put some commas in there, basically I can select these cells, and I have some basic number formats up here. So there's a comma style. It'll put commas in, and it'll also put in some decimals. Now when you get something like this, when you get these pound signs, it's not a bad problem. It simply means that the number in the cell is too wide or too big to fit in the cell. So you have a couple choices. You can make the number smaller by simply decreasing the font size, or you can make the columns wider. Make those columns a little bit wider, and that'll display the whole numbers. Now, if I don't need to see all those decimals, then I can select the cells, and I can go to my decrease decimal button, and take some of those out. Now you notice the alignment of my numbers here is just a little bit off, but I could do something similar. I could select these other cells and I could do a comma style and get rid of the decimals. So now they're lined up a little bit better. And my first numbers are sized 11. Let me change these back over to 11. So now they're kind of lined up nice and neat. And if I need to get my borders back in, I'll just simply select this bottom group of cells and apply all borders. So by using the comma style, I'm kind of implying that these numbers could be units sold or tickets sold or something like that. But what if they were dollar values? I can select the cells that have the numbers, and I can choose the accounting number format. Notice it's a drop-down menu of choices, and of course I can do euros or British pound. But I'm just going to click on the accounting number format, and that applies a fixed dollar sign. A fixed dollar sign means the dollar sign is kind of stationed over there on the left side of the cell. And once again, I don't have enough room to kind of hold everything at the bottom, to display everything at the bottom, I mean. There's also a floating dollar sign. So while these cells are still selected, I could go up to my drop down and I could choose the currency format. When I click this one, notice the dollar signs are right up next to the numbers. That's a floating dollar sign. It's personal preference on what you might like the best. So I'll go ahead and keep that particular style right there. Okay, so let's put in a little bit more data on here. Clearly we can total some numbers, but we can also do a few other basic functions like average, max, and min, and count. I don't think I'll do count right now, but I will check out average, max, and min. So I've got my total. I'm going to go ahead and type in average, max, and min. Now for the average function, the max and the min functions, you can also get those from the Autosum button, but you need to go over to the drop down, and it's got a few of the most common functions right in there. So I'm going to go ahead and choose average, and notice that it's not selecting the proper range for me. It wants to select B2 through B7, but that would be incorrect. I only want to average B2 through B6, so I'm going to use my pointer here, and I'm going to click and drag the range B2 through B6. And when I press enter, now I have my average. So my average, let's say, revenue for Monday per movie was $313.40. Similarly, I'll do max, so I'll use my drop down, choose the max function, use my pointer to select the appropriate range of cells, and then press enter. Min, use my drop down for the Autosum button, choose the min function, select the appropriate range of cells, press enter. Now that I've got these formulas or functions entered appropriately, I can select all three of them and use the fill handle, drag to the right, so now I have the average, max, and min for all of the other cells. Now I want them to be formatted in the same way as my totals, so I'm just going to click on one of my cells that contain my properly formatted totals, and I'm going to use the format painter, the little paintbrush. I'll just click on that format painter, and then when I click and drag these other cells or select those other cells, they'll copy over the formatting. So that's a really convenient tool, and I can do the same thing over here. So for total, I'll use the format painter, and then I'll select the three cells for labels, average, max, and min, and now those have the formatting. So those are some basic statistical functions, really. Now let me show you this. Let's assume that for some reason, let's say for movie title 3 on Monday, the projector was broken, something went awry, and there was nothing in there. We have a couple options. So look what happens. In fact, make a mental note of this here. My average for Monday is 313. In fact, let me go ahead and bold this for a moment, and I'm going to change the background color to yellow there, just what stands out to us. So my average is 313.40. If I go to my Monday movie title 3 and I type in a 0 and press enter, that drops down to 230. Okay, so the 0 has quite an impact on my average. I'm going to Control Z to undo. So my average is back to 313. Now instead of typing in a 0 for Monday, I'm just going to delete that value. And notice there was an effect on my average, but not nearly as dramatic. So a blank cell is called a null value. Having nothing in there doesn't affect the average quite as much, because what's happening now is I'm getting an average of the four numbers that I do have. If I have a 0 in here, I'm getting an average of the 5 numbers I do have, including the 0. So there is a difference when you have a 0 versus a null value, and it depends on the kind of situation. If my goal was really to find out what was my average take per movie, then you might rationalize, well, yeah, there was nothing on there, so that's a null, and my average take per movie was $287. Okay, and in the next couple of videos we'll look at some more Excel basic features.